Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide.
Hi, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
We realize that this episode is releasing on April 1st, which in many places is April Fool's Day. And I'm going to be honest, April Fool's Day is not my favorite thing. I don't love like surprises and people trying to trick you. That's just sort of not my.
I was going to say, I don't like the trickery.
Yeah,
I don't
enjoy it.
Seems
so
it's a little, I don't know.
I never liked April Fool's Day. When people would do stuff like that. So here's what we're going to do. We are not going to fool you. We are going to tell you some truths today that we hope you will all go back and think about. And it's related to something that I find myself frequently having to explain to people who work with the following groups of children: infants, toddlers, 2-year-olds, children who are 3 to 5 years old and even up, who struggle developmentally with things like attention to task, resisting impulse, persistence, communication, but all infants, toddlers, and twos. I'm talking about if you are teaching or raising infants, toddlers, and twos, I think it's finally happened. We have an episode that I think you all can just grasp onto, in addition to the people who work with children who are older, who are maybe behind the expectations for their age in certain ways, which happens every year. So everybody, here's what it is, right? This really applies to everybody. But I'm especially dedicating it to infants, toddlers, and twos, staff, and families. Here it is. Stop trying to fit a square peg into a round hole by making these children do large group time. Stop. It is not developmentally appropriate, especially for children from birth through that 2-year-old year. We start to introduce large group time, usually when they're 3, but some children for years remain unable to function in it. We introduce it starting at 3. Under 3, I'm going to say it again, it is not developmentally appropriate for those children. They are not getting things from it that they can use. Teaching young children works best when they're in small groups, always through the early childhood years. Infants, toddlers, twos, and children who struggle with any aspect of their development over that age benefit from one-to-one interactions and very small groups. I had someone who works with toddlers one time ask me, how do you define a small group for toddlers? And I don't know, Alice and I have both worked with the age group, but here's how I define it. In the toddler room or the toddler age group, a small group is 2 to 3 children in my mind.
Yeah.
What do you think, Allison?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think anything over 3 children would be too much. Even 3 is might be too much depending, but yeah, definitely 1, 2, at the most 3, because I think after that it's too much. Like you can't attend to the needs of all of them. They're not going to be paying attention the larger the group is, and they're not going to get as much out of it.
That's the point, though. They're not getting as much out of it.
Point.
I have had multiple from different places and areas, multiple people tell me, we put our toddlers or we put our twos, we put them in a circle time or a large group time, and we show them colors and shapes, and then they tell us what they are, or they see their classmates say, that's red, and now they're like, that's red, and I say, show me the red, and they point to that thing. Folks, that is called imitation. It's not deeper knowledge. Children are natural born imitators. They do it from birth. They're really good at it by the time they're toddlers and twos. They will imitate and imitate and imitate, but that doesn't mean they have a deeper understanding.
Right, because repeating something does not mean I know it, right? Like I could repeat maybe theories of physics if somebody made me memorize it. That doesn't mean I know anything about physics or how to apply it or anything like that. Memorizing something is not learning. You're just regurgitating information, right? It's not, you're not
Yes.
able to apply it. You might not even know what it means. You're just memorizing, right? So when you say to me that, like, oh, it's great, I tell them this is red and they repeat after me when I say this is red, that's great. They're just repeating you. They've learned to repeat you. They have not learned that actually means red, or that is a square, or that, they don't know what that means. They're just repeating. And if you sat up there and said this is yellow when it's actually red, they would still repeat this is yellow.
They would.
Because they've learned to repeat you. Yeah.
You're right. You're right. If you have a poster up, like with the shapes, and you say to the children, this is red. Here's what they don't know. Red can also be a ball and a block and a piece of clothing. And they don't take the information and apply it in ways that are very helpful and useful.
Right.
I point to a square on a chart and say, this is purple. Here's what they don't know. Eggplants are purple. Flowers are purple. I need to give them lots of hands-on things that are that same color in order for them to understand purple. And they need hands-on. Children are in the sensory motor phases of development. I don't want to show them a picture of a red rectangle. I want to hand them a block that is a red rectangle and say, here, feel this, manipulate this, look at this. This is a red rectangle. And then I might hand them a yellow rectangle and say, now you feel this, manipulate this. It has the same shape as the red rectangle. This is a yellow rectangle. They need to see those differences and experience it hands-on. Please, folks, always remember, just because a child tells you information that was shared with them, whether it's through modeling from their classmates or you, all they're doing is repeating. They're imitating and repeating. You have to make sure they can use the information. Like, you need to be able to say to them, can you bring me the red Lego? If they cannot do that, the entire other thing was meaningless. And even if they do that, then you should look at them and say, now bring me a yellow Lego and a green Lego, and go get me a green ball and a yellow, and see what they do. Because simply lining toddlers and twos up in front of something that's hanging up and having them repeat after you, which is what they're doing, is different. I'm reminded, Alison talked about, you can memorize a whole bunch of things and give it back. It reminds me of when I was in chemistry class as a high schooler. I memorized a whole bunch of things. I gave it back to the teachers. I got an A in that class. Today, the only thing I can tell you is H is hydrogen, O is oxygen, and H2O is water. I probably know all that from other things because I don't remember anything else. It was useless to me. No one cared if it was useful to me. And so I have not carried chemistry with me throughout my life. I want these children to carry colors and shapes and numbers. You want them to know numbers and letters? You have to show them in use. We have talked about this so many times on the podcast, and I'm not sure why people think it doesn't hold true for even the younger children than we ordinarily are aiming at.
When you were talking about this whole chemistry thing, I started thinking of, like, okay, you learned what the test was going to be about, and you studied that material so you could pass the test, which, in America, and I know this podcast is international, but in America, it's a big testing world, right? And there are children who get tested very, very young, and they learn what's on the test and they study that, and then they get an A, and then they move on. But they really are only learning the information so they can get an A, not so that they could apply it, right? Like, I think of, like, my entire high school career, I don't think I remember anything that I learned there, okay? Because it was like, all right, here's the test, here's the study guide, I'm going to study it. But when it comes to young children with things that that they're going to need to know for the rest of their life, like colors, numbers, how to count, letters, things like that. That's stuff that you want. It has to have staying power. It has to have value. It has to stick. So you don't want to sit there and just teach them for the test. You don't want a 3-year-old and be like, okay, cool. She's regurgitating all this information I gave them. Great. Boom, pass the test. No, because she needs to know what 3 means when she's 10, when she's 40, when she's 100. She needs to know what that means. So you don't want that. You want it to be a hands-on activity so that the information, it's not just that they're regurgitating it, that it actually has like some sort of meaning and value. And like, this is 3. 3 means 3 blocks. I'm holding 3 blocks.
Right.
3, you know, that maybe at first they know that 3 comes after 2, and then they start learning that this 3 has a quantity, like and it needs to, like, and the only way to learn quantity, in my opinion, is to hand them 3 things.
Well,
right?
that's the truth. It's not even just your opinion.
I mean? It's
just the
right?
truth.
That's the only way to teach it. So like, sitting there and showing them a poster that has 3 bears on it or whatever, to me is like, great, that's a great photo. But do I take that photo and see the 3 bears and realize that means 3? Probably not, until you hand me 3 bears, you know, and even then I might not get it for another couple months. Like, you know, like, I think that there's like this world of like, it's such a testing world that they're like, some teachers might sit there and say, well, look at what all my students know how to do, but they really don't know how to do it.
It's not useful. It's not useful. They can't use it.
The how is important, right? They don't know how to use it. But yeah, it might look good when your boss comes in and is like, oh, look, everybody knows what color red is, you know, but can they hand you a red Lego? Probably not. You know,
even if they can, let's talk about their social emotional development for a second, and their cognitive development, their brain development. Even if they can, how much time did you spend trying to get these children to all sit at that age or at that developmental level for a large group time? It is like herding cats. Why are you wasting educational time? I worked in a time room. I know it's herding cats. We have said
I don't understand why, as a teacher, you're stressing yourself out by herding the cats.
I don't know.
Because to me, like, when you said that, I was like, that sounds really stressful to me, to be like, you come here. Oh, you went off because you're too, you know, like, and I even asked you, I'm like, wait, they're doing circle time with infants? How are they doing that?
I've seen it. I have gone to programs where they sit the children like in high chairs or at the bucket table where they sit in these little things, and they sit them there and they start like reciting things at them. This is not a good use of a baby's time.
Right. Do they think that the babies are paying attention to what they're
I don't
saying?
know.
Because
they feel like I've had teachers say we need to expose them to it. Not yet. No. They're not ready yet. They'll get there.
And the way they get there is by not doing that. I think, like, you know what I mean? Like,
that's true.
You know, I taught in infant rooms before, and I never even crossed my mind to do a large group time. Never even thought of it, you know, like, because to me, infants, especially that young, it's more one-on-one kind of stuff, right? And
I don't know. There are times.
Like, what do you mean? Like, they're sitting in a big circle? Like, how are they doing that? Like,
yes, they are. There are times when I will see something and I'll tell Alison, like, we should do an episode about it. And I describe to her what I've seen, and her jaw just hits the floor. The infants was one of them. But I understand.
Today, when you texted me about this, my reaction was, OMG, really? Like,
it really, stop.
That was still going on. Yeah.
They don't have the impulse control to sit there. That's brain development. They don't have the attention to task yet. That's brain development. They need to move. They need to move the new muscle fiber that's constantly growing in their bodies. That's physical development. They don't see that other people have wants and needs, like you wanting to sit there, the child next to them not wanting to, like, they don't want them to roll on them. Why are we herding cats?
Why?
Stop. Think about how much better that time can be used one-on-one or in small groups, introducing concepts in a hands-on, meaningful way, and doing that over and over in these small groups and one-to-one. I don't care what anybody ever says to me. People learn better, and that's true. I think through adulthood, we all learn better in small groups or one-to-one. None of us learn best in a giant lecture hall with 60 people listening to a lecturer. That is not the best way to learn.
And to the best way to learn.
These very young children, your circle time is equal to the lecture hall with 60 college students trying to grasp what the lecturer is saying.
Yes.
Please, I'm just gonna beg now. It's so sad. infants, toddlers, twos, or children with any sort of developmental struggle, and your boss comes to you and says, you are required to do large group time, please say no. That is not a recommendation of the infant toddler environmental rating scale. That is not a recommendation of high quality curriculums like the creative curriculum. People who use creative curriculum now are like, what do you mean? They only talk about large group time from starting at 3 years old. It is not in any of the materials for infants, toddlers, and twos. If you look in other tools that talk about how do we approach children with special needs, for example, it doesn't say everybody take these children and sit them in a large group time and make them sit there while we recite things. It doesn't say that.
No.
Please.
Yeah.
You know, I think this is what I think, Alison. We have a perception. I know it actually. We have a perception about what early childhood programs should look like from things we have seen from our childhoods all the way up. Things like TV shows that show all these little children just marching along with the teacher.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
That is not, no, that is not meaningful learning. If you are a family member of a child who is not yet ready, that is not age or developmentally appropriate to sit in that large group time, I implore you to go to your child's program and say, do not want my child to be forced to sit in a large group time. It is not how my child learns best, because if you don't advocate for them, some of these policies will never go away.
That's true. And I feel like that's exactly when you say force, that's what you're doing. You're forcing them, especially with these little itty bitties that you're talking about. They're putting them in bucket seats or the high chairs. Like, you're restraining them basically to sit there and listen.
That would be illegal.
Which is illegal. Like, why would you do that even for 5 minutes? Like, why not just let them explore and learn on their own? Like, I implore you to, if you are a parent, to make sure that your child is not being restrained while the teacher sings songs or is making you recite things. Like, that's alarming in a way, but yes. But
there
that's
are
what you're
many
doing.
ways that we restrain children, by the way. It's not just tying them into seats. It's also sit on my lap and I'm not letting you go. That's restraining a child. That is against the regulations in early childhood. Sit down on the floor. I'm going to put you between my legs so that you can't move, 3 or 4 year old. That is restraining a child, and that is against the regulations. It also goes against what the environmental rating scales tell us, which is no child has to stay in your large group time. Here's what I tend to tell if you're an infant, toddler, twos teacher and you're thinking, well, what do I do? Here's what I tell them. Sing a song. Whoever sings it with you, that was your large group time, period, the end.
Yes. I feel like that's what I used to do when I taught the toddlers was, I'm going to be over here in the corner and I'm going to be singing songs. And if you would like to join me, come on over. And if you don't want to, that's fine too. And I'm just going to keep singing songs for a few minutes. And most of the time kids will come over. Will all of them come over? No. Is that okay with me? Yep, fine. I just had a little group here of 5 children singing with me. That's great. I don't need all of them to be there for that. And maybe in an hour or so, I'm going to gather another group and do something different. And maybe the kids that didn't come over will come over that time. Maybe they won't. It's okay. Like, I feel like there's this, like, I don't know if teachers think like if they don't have a large group time that then they're not teaching.
I think
that's what it is.
I think they think that it must be introduced starting really, really young so that children will know what to do when they're all together. I also think that they think that they're learning from each other, because I've had multiple people tell me that, the children one child says blue and now they can all point to the blue. They are imitating that first child. You really have to think about their stage of development. Again, large group time in the way, or circle time in the way that people think of it, is only age appropriate over the age of 3, and not for all of those children who are over the age of 3. Some of them just still can't sit there, and that's still part of typical development. Doesn't mean they're not going to sit and listen to their teacher when they're 8, 9, 10 years old. They will have all those other years under their belt of maturing and brain development and all those sorts of things. So, again, square peg, round hole. If you find yourself struggling to get the children to do something, that is square peg trying to be fit into a round hole. It's not something that this child or these children can do right now. We're always worried about the future. We forget we're teaching somebody right now. And that's somebody right now. It may not be developmentally appropriate for them, and that's okay. We as adults have to let go of our notion of what preschool should look like from age-old TV shows like Romper Room, which was on when I was a child. And all those children marched along with their teacher. And there were many reasons why they did that, including that the TV stations were actually hiring older children or bribing them in some way. Like,
well, I'm sure they were getting paid somehow.
The families were anyway. I don't know how it worked, but I know that there were methods they used that made it look like that's how your classroom should look. But no.
You know, and that's a TV show. You got to think of like, TV's not real people. Like, and I know that's where we get all of our, like, a lot of our info from is from TV and media and stuff like that, but it's fake,
not real,
right? Like the kids in Romper Room, I'm sure some of them grew up to be actors, and that's what they were doing, and they were getting paid to do that job. The teacher also probably wasn't a real teacher. You know what I'm saying? It's just like,
no, she wasn't. They were a TV host.
I'm gonna save myself with the show ER. I'm sorry, that's not the way a hospital runs. Okay, like it's not like it's entertainment. It is not how it's meant to be. It is a show.
That being said, my brother-in-law was in the hospital, and I contacted Alison very excitedly because one of the doctors in the ER looked like somebody from Grey's Anatomy, and I thought, we're going to be okay now.
You're going to be okay.
That being said,
George Clooney was my doctor. I'd be fine.
I'd be fine. Yeah, I'd be good. Or George Clooney now or back then? I don't know. But let's. So if we go back
either one, honestly, does it matter?
I know. You know, if we go back to those children are not, to teach them useful information and have them applying information, we have to work with them really in small groups and one-to-one. Otherwise, jokes on us that it's like an April Fool's. We'll go back to the April Fool's thing. April Fools, I don't really know how I'm going to use any of this information, or I don't understand any of this information. Really, folks, just let go of what we perceive as traditional preschool in so many ways that we have. This is episode 272 of doing things like saying, here's high quality practice, here's a myth, here's something we can let go of and be okay. Here's something we can add and be okay. What's something we can add from today? Sing a song. Whoever comes over, you're done. I have a distinct memory I'm going to share with all of you before we go. I have a memory from working in that toddler room, and we're talking a long time ago now, in the beginning of my career. I was a co-teacher in a toddler room, and we had these very long windows, and at the bottom of the windows, which were near the ground. And so if I sat on that windowsill, it was wide enough to sit on, if I sat on the windowsill, it put me pretty much eye level to the toddlers. And I have a distinct memory of every day going over to one of those windowsills, sitting down and just starting to sing. I didn't even invite anybody. I just sat down and started to sing, and the children came, build it and they will come. The children would come over. I sang their favorite songs once a day. They would come over and watch me. Some of them just watched me, the toddlers. Some of them would try and sing along. Some of them danced. And whoever came over. I did not do a come and do this with me announcement. I didn't say it's over announcement either. I just kept singing and dancing with them for as long as they were happy to do it. So it doesn't have to be such a formal thing. It just doesn't. Okay, I think I'm done now. I feel so much better. This was like an episode rant for me. I apologize for bringing everyone on my rant, but I hope that you all have food for thought about trying to get children to do things they're just not ready for. And when we do, how much are they learning? How much are they really able to take and use?
And just because you're not doing large group does not mean you are not a teacher.
Thank you. This is very true. This is very, very true. All right, folks, go think about all this. Square pegs, round holes. I hope you get through April Fool's Day okay, without too much angst.
Yes.
And we will catch you next week on the podcast with an entirely different topic.
Bye, peeps.
Bye, peeps.